Imagine someone stealing your blueprints before, like the foundation of your house is even poured.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
Right. And then they just go ahead and publish those blueprints on the front page of the local newspaper.
Just completely out in the open.
Exactly. The surprise of the architecture, the secret hidden rooms, the entire structural integrity of what you were trying to build just instantly exposed to the world.
Yeah.
And, I mean, for most architects, maybe it's an annoyance. But if you are building a mystery like a story, where the entire architecture relies on the audience not knowing where the trapdoors are, a leak, like, that isn't just an annoyance. It is catastrophic.
It completely deflates the tension.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire engine of a mystery relies on control. The author has to have absolute control over when, where, and how information is dispensed to the audience. When that control is ripped away, the engine just stalls out.
It stalls out completely. And that is exactly what happened to Quentin Tarantino back in 2014.
It really was a massive deal at the time.
Huge. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are stepping into a freezing, blood-soaked Wyoming blizzard to unpack a script that almost didn't exist. We're talking about The Hateful Eight.
Such a fascinating piece of work.
It really is. We're analyzing the original screenplay alongside this incredibly dense, insightful foreword by film curator Elvis Mitchell. And our mission today is to, well, tear this thing down to the studs.
Let's do it.
We're going to examine how this story uses the claustrophobia of a confined space, the intense, lingering racism of the post-Civil War era, and just visceral violence to create this pressure cooker microcosm of a nation that was entirely divided.
Right.
But to do that, we have to start with that blueprint leak.
We really do, because the meta-story of The Hateful Eight fundamentally informs how we understand the text itself.
Yeah.
So in the foreword, Elvis Mitchell gives us this behind-the-scenes look at the devastation Tarantino felt. I mean, the script leaked online. It was everywhere.
Totally out of his control.
Exactly. And Tarantino, feeling completely betrayed by whoever in his inner circle let it slip, he shelved it entirely. He publicly stated he was done with it.
Yeah, he was furious.
He withdrew the material and said it would never see the light of day.
But I want to push back on that reaction for a second because, on the surface, it seems like an overreaction, right?
I mean, sure.
Directors have scripts leak all the time. Blockbuster films have their entire plots posted on Reddit months before release, and the movies still get made.
Right, yeah.
So why did this specific leak break him to the point of actually abandoning the project?
Well, it goes back to the specific genre he was working in. So Tarantino is famous for genre hopping, right? He's deconstructed martial arts films, screwball comedies, war epics.
Right, he does everything.
But here he wanted to tackle the classic drawing room mystery. Mitchell specifically notes a conversation they had about Agatha Christie. And when you're writing an Agatha Christie-style drawing room mystery, the plot isn't just a vehicle for action.
Like, it's not just things happening.
Exactly. The plot is the entire psychological payload. If the audience already knows who the liar is in the room, the dialogue totally loses its double meaning. The subtext is ruined.
That makes a lot of sense. You can't watch a magician if you already know the card is up his sleeve.
Exactly.
And Mitchell points out a very specific inspiration here. He talks about a 1965 film adaptation called 10 Little Indians, which was based on a highly controversial Agatha Christie novel originally titled 10 Little Niggers.
Right.
Tarantino was struck by the intrinsic ugliness of Christie's original conception.
Right, and it's vital to understand what Tarantino did with that ugliness, because he didn't shy away from it. He weaponized it.
He leaned all the way in.
He really did. He decided to use the casual, blunt racism of the post-Civil War era as the sort of original sin that fundamentally stains every single character in this piece.
Right.
In a standard Agatha Christie mystery, you have a detective who represents moral order coming into a space to root out the one bad apple.
Like a Hercule Poirot.
Exactly. But in The Hateful Eight, Tarantino removes the moral center entirely. Every single person in the room is stained by the original sin of American history. There is no innocent bystander.
Wow. But despite the leak and despite the frustration, the script was resurrected. And it wasn't through, some boardroom deal.
Yo, not at all.
It was through a one-night-only high-security live read at LACMA, curated by Mitchell himself.
Yeah, that event was legendary.
No recording, no streaming. You had to physically be in the room. Harvey Weinstein even paid for extra security to confiscate cell phones at the door.
Just intense lockdown.
Yeah. And Tarantino directed a cast that included Samuel L. Jackson, Kurt Russell, Walton Goggins. And the energy was so electric, the reading was so visceral, that it convinced Tarantino to actually make the movie. The characters simply demanded to be realized.
It proves that a script is a living document, really.
Yeah.
Reading it in isolation is one thing, but hearing the cadence, the rhythm, the sheer musicality of the hostility in these words, it just changes the chemistry of the text.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into that text. We open on this glorious, breathtaking shot of a snow-covered Wyoming mountain range.
Beautiful.
The script specifically calls for it to be shot in 70mm Super Scope. Now, historically, 70mm is the format you use for sprawling epics.
Like Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes, or Ben-Hur. It's designed to capture the vastness of the world. But Tarantino uses it to introduce a stagecoach that is desperately trying to outrun a massive, brutal blizzard.
Right, so we have this tiny object in a huge frame.
Exactly. The horses are snorting, the driver, OB, is fighting the reins, and nature is essentially just closing in on them.
The use of 70mm here is a brilliant visual contradiction. By using a format meant to capture infinite space and then slowly forcing that massive frame inside a tiny wooden box, first the stagecoach and later the haberdashery, he amplifies the claustrophobia exponentially.
Oh, that's so smart.
Yeah, because the extreme width of the frame means the audience can see everyone in the room at all times.
You literally can't look away from anyone.
You can't escape the geography of the tension. When you are trapped in a space that is filmed that widely, every subtle glance, every twitch of a hand near a holster is in focus.
And the tension inside that stagecoach is instantly palpable.
Mm.
So we meet John Ruth, a massive, rough-looking bounty hunter known as the Hangman. And he's chained to his prisoner, Daisy Domergue.
Quite the pair.
Yeah, and she's bruised, she has a black eye, she's wearing a man's coat, but she has this fierce, defiant smirk. Ruth is taking her to Red Rock to hang for a $10,000 bounty.
What stands out immediately is the subversion of the Western archetype here.
How so?
Well, the bounty hunter in American mythology is usually this stoic, morally ambiguous, but ultimately righteous figure.
Well, I got Clint Eastwood.
Exactly. But John Ruth is deeply paranoid and highly abusive. I mean, he physically strikes Daisy whenever she steps out of line, yet he is obsessed with the process of the law. He refuses to kill her for the bounty, insisting she must hang.
Hold on, let me stop you right there because this is a massive contradiction I really want to unpack. He elbows her in the face. Later, he throws hot stew on her. He is absolute brutal. So if he is so comfortable with extreme violence, why the obsession with keeping her alive for the hangman?
It's a great question.
Why endure this agonizing stagecoach ride through a deadly blizzard when he could just shoot her in the snow and strap her to the roof?
Because John Ruth is using the institution of the law to launder his own savagery.
Launder his savagery.
Yeah, if he shoots her in the back in the snow, he has to look in the mirror and admit he is just a murderer for hire. He's a killer.
Right.
But by enduring the hardship of transporting her alive, by handing her over to a judge and a hangman, he buys himself moral superiority. The institution absolves him.
So it's all about how he sees himself.
Exactly. He can say, I didn't kill her. Civilized society killed her. I'm just a servant of justice. It's a psychological defense mechanism against the reality of his violent profession.
That is fascinating. He needs the bureaucracy of death to separate himself from the outlaws he hunts. And speaking of outlaws, the stagecoach is forced to halt because there's an impediment in the road. Sitting on a pile of 3 frozen dead bodies is a black man smoking a pipe, dressed in Union cavalry pants with a yellow stripe down the leg.
Major Marquise Warren.
Yes, a former Union officer turned bounty hunter. His horse died, and he needs a ride.
This instantly shifts the dynamic from a simple Western survival story into a deeply political confrontation.
Totally.
Ruth and Warren know each other slightly, right? They shared a steak dinner months ago in Chattanooga. But the racial hostility of the era is immediate. When Ruth introduces Daisy, she looks at this black Union officer and casually drops a horrific racial slur.
And Ruth's reaction is so telling. He doesn't chide her for the moral failing of racism. He scolds her pragmatism.
Yes, exactly.
He tells her that black people don't like being called that anymore and find it offensive. It perfectly encapsulates Mitchell's point in the foreword. Racism isn't a character flaw in this universe. It's the air they breathe.
It's the baseline reality for these characters.
Right. And then Ruth forcefully strikes Daisy in the head with his gun, knocking her to the floor of the moving coach, just for speaking out of turn.
It really forces you, the listener, to confront the total absence of traditional heroes here.
There are no good guys.
None. We are locked in a box with an abusive, paranoid lawman, an unrepentant racist murderer, and a bounty hunter who casually uses frozen human corpses as furniture. The moral compass is spinning wildly.
But Warren gets on board, and here we are introduced to one of the most important props in the entire narrative, the Lincoln letter.
Ah, yes.
As they are writing, Ruth asks Warren, "Do you still got it?" The Lincoln letter. And Warren carefully pulls out a piece of parchment, supposedly a personal letter from Abraham Lincoln to Major Warren.
And look at how John Ruth, this hardened, cynical, abusive man, reacts to it. He puts on delicate little reading glasses.
Yeah, it's such a gentle moment for him.
He handles it like a holy relic. He reads a line aloud about Mary Todd calling Lincoln to bed.
Yeah.
Ruth is visibly moved by this.
Which raises the question, why? Why does this piece of paper mean so much to a guy like John Ruth?
Because the Lincoln letter represents the myth of the righteous union. Ruth needs to believe that the blood spilled in the Civil War meant something noble, that the leaders were good, folksy men who cared about their soldiers.
Like there's a point to all the violence.
Right. The letter is a tangible piece of American mythology for him. And for Major Warren, carrying this letter acts as a literal shield.
How so?
In a deeply hostile post-war landscape, that letter earns him a shred of legitimacy and respect from white men in power, like Ruth.
It's his passport.
Exactly.
But Daisy, who thrives on destroying illusions, spits a massive loogie right onto the parchment.
Just completely disrespects it.
Yeah, and this results in Warren punching her so hard, she falls out the stagecoach door, dragging the handcuffed John Ruth into the freezing snow with her.
It's pure chaos.
It is. They scramble back in, but the claustrophobia is about to get worse because they come across another stranded traveler in the blizzard.
And if Major Warren represents the Union Army's lingering trauma, this new arrival represents the unrepentant, festering wound of the Confederacy.
Chris Mannix.
Chris Mannix, a young, racist, former Confederate marauder who claims he is on his way to be the new sheriff of Red Rock.
Ruth hates him instantly. He recognizes the name. Mannix's father led Mannix's Marauders, a renegade group from South Carolina that Ruth dismisses as a bunch of losers who wrapped themselves in the rebel flag just so they could kill and steal without consequences.
Yeah, Ruth has zero respect for him.
But Mannix leverages the law against Ruth. He points out that if they leave the newly appointed sheriff to freeze to death, it's murder. Ruth is trapped by his own obsession with the law and has to let him in.
And now the geography of the stagecoach becomes a literal powder keg. You have a black Union major sitting knee to knee with a racist Confederate renegade trapped inside a wooden box surrounded by a lethal blizzard.
It's so tense.
The Civil War is violently relitigated right there in the carriage.
Mannix goes right for the throat. He knows exactly who Major Warren is. He gleefully reveals to Ruth that the Confederacy put a massive bounty on Warren's head.
And the reason why is chilling.
Right. Mannix explains that Warren was a prisoner of war at a Confederate camp called Wellenbeck. To escape, Warren burned the entire camp to the ground, burning 47 Confederate soldiers alive.
And Warren does not offer a single word of denial or apology. He leans into it. He tells Mannix, "I fought the war to kill white Southern crackers, and that means kill him any way I can."
Wow.
But Mannix twists the knife further, stripping away any heroic narrative. He reveals that the fire didn't just kill Confederates. 37 Union prisoners also burned to death. Warren sacrificed his own men to create the chaos he needed to escape.
The script gives us this stark visual flashback of Warren's court-martial. He isn't given a hero's discharge. A white officer literally paints a yellow stripe of cowardice down Warren's back and drums him out of the cavalry. Mannix throws this in his face to prove Warren is nothing but a killer. But I have to say, looking at this, is Mannix entirely wrong? Like, Warren did burn his own men.
This is the brilliance of the script's moral ambiguity. Mannix is a hateful racist, but his historical facts about Warren's ruthlessness are accurate.
Right.
Conversely, Warren points out the hypocrisy of Mannix's lost cause romanticism. He asks how many black towns his marauders sacked and burned in the name of dignity and defeat.
They're both just tearing each other down.
Both men are exposing the savage, hypocritical underbelly of the other's war record. It gets so heated that Warren actually draws his pistol and puts it right against Mannix's temple just to force him to stop using racial slurs.
The tension is suffocating, but the blizzard outside is worse. Finally, the stagecoach arrives at their shelter, Minnie's haberdashery.
They finally make it out of the storm.
They've made it out. But the transition from the moving stagecoach to the static cabin doesn't relieve the tension, it multiplies it. Because they step out of the cold right into the middle of an Agatha Christie setup.
The physical space is so important here. The haberdashery is a large, rustic trading post. But immediately, the baseline of reality is skewed.
Something feels off.
Exactly. Minnie, the beloved owner, and her partner, Sweet Dave, are missing. In their place is a Mexican man named Bob, who claims Minnie went to visit her mother on the north side of the mountain and left him in charge.
Which instantly raises Warren's suspicions. And to add to the frantic energy, the front door's lock is broken.
Oh, this is such a great detail.
Every time someone enters or exits, the blizzard violently whips into the room, and they have to physically nail the door shut with a hammer and planks of wood. It's a hilarious, exhausting running gag, but it also serves a narrative purpose, right?
Absolutely. The hammering of the nails acts as an auditory punctuation mark. It signifies the sealing of the tomb.
The sealing of the tomb. I love that.
Yeah. Once that door is nailed shut, no one is coming to save them, and no one can leave. They are sealed in with whoever and whatever is inside.
And what's inside are three strangers sitting quietly. We have Oswaldo Mowbray, an incredibly polite, foppish British man in a gray suit. We have Joe Gage, a rugged cowboy quietly writing his life story in a journal. And by the fire, an elderly man in a full Confederate uniform, General Sanford Smithers, sitting in total silence.
John Ruth walks into this room, and his paranoia dials up to an 11.
He just immediately senses danger.
He is a professional hunter of men, and his instincts tell him this room is a trap. He immediately isolates Daisy at the bar and begins forcefully interrogating the strangers, starting with Oswaldo.
Oswaldo claims to be the actual hangman of Red Rock, traveling there to execute a murderer. He even shows Ruth his official warrant, and this sparks one of the most compelling philosophical debates in the entire script.
It really does.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with John Ruth laundering his violence. Oswaldo lays out a thesis on the nature of justice.
Right. Oswaldo meticulously breaks down the difference between frontier justice and civilized justice. He uses Daisy as the example.
Okay.
He says, if the relatives of the person Daisy murdered were to break down the door right now and string her up in the snow, that is frontier justice. It is deeply satisfying, it quenches a thirst for vengeance, but it is inherently flawed because it is emotional. It's apt to be as wrong as it is right.
But civilized justice, Oswaldo argues, requires a hangman. A man who doesn't know Daisy, who doesn't care what she did, who feels absolutely no satisfaction in her death. He just pulls the lever. Oswaldo says justice delivered without dispassion is always in danger of not being justice.
And I want to pause on that because you have to look at how that speech functions in the context of the room.
Right, look at who he's talking to.
Exactly. Oswaldo is delivering a monologue advocating for cold, clinical dispassion to a room filled entirely with people driven by extreme, fiery, historical grudges. Everyone in that room is governed by prejudice, vengeance, and survival instinct. Oswaldo is presenting an ideal of justice that simply does not exist in the world of this script. It is an illusion.
An illusion that John Ruth desperately wants to believe in. But Ruth's paranoia overrules his trust in Oswaldo's polite philosophy.
He's not taking any chances.
No, Ruth forcefully disarms everyone. He takes Joe Gage's gun, with Major Warren literally holding a knife to Gage's throat to make it happen. He takes Oswaldo's gun, he smashes a shotgun he finds against the fireplace. He puts the pieces in a bucket and makes OB dump them down the outhouse hole.
Ruth takes control of the board. He stands in the center of the room and announces his deduction loudly. Someone in this room is not who they say they are.
He just lays it all out.
He tells them someone is in cahoots with Daisy Dahmer, just waiting for him to close his eyes so they can murder him and set her free.
He lays the cards on the table, and Daisy just sits there, completely silent with that smirk.
She's just watching it all play out.
But here is the genius of the script's pacing. Ruth has set up the primary mystery. Who is the liar? But before we can even begin to solve the mystery of Daisy's accomplice, a completely different, deeply personal grudge explodes at the dinner table.
The overarching Civil War tension we saw in the stagecoach finally boils over.
They sit down to eat this mysterious stew that Bob the Mexican made. Chris Mannix, who has been stewing in his hatred of Major Warren, decides to expose the Black Major.
He's been waiting for this.
Mannix turns to the table and boldly declares that the Abraham Lincoln letter is a complete forgery. He says there is no way the President of the United States is pen pals with a disgraced black cavalry officer.
And the tension here relies on how Warren will react. Will he defend his honor? Will he fight Mannix?
Right, what's his move?
Instead, Warren does something far more devastating. He calmly looks at John Ruth and admits it. Of course it was, he says. The letter is fake.
Ruth is absolutely crushed.
Yeah.
He looks at Warren with genuine heartbreak and asks why he would lie about something so sacred. And Warren's answer is a masterclass in psychological survival. He says, "The only time black folks are safe is when white folks are disarmed." This letter had the desired effect of disarming white folks.
It's a profound moment of clarity. Warren is pulling back the curtain on the performance he has to put on just to survive in America.
He has to play a part.
He couldn't flag down a stagecoach as a black man in a blizzard who would have been left to freeze or shot. He needed the white man to feel a sympathetic connection to him. He weaponized the mythology of Abraham Lincoln to manipulate Ruth's emotions.
Wow.
The letter wasn't a keepsake, it was a tool, a skeleton key to access spaces he was otherwise barred from.
But wait, I have to challenge this strategy. By admitting the letter is fake, hasn't Warren just destroyed his only shield? Ruth is furious. Mannix feels vindicated. Warren has isolated himself. Why admit it now?
Because Warren no longer needs the shield.
He's inside.
He is inside the cabin, he is armed, and more importantly, he is pivoting from defense to offense. He is about to engage in a calculated act of psychological warfare, and he wants the room to know exactly how ruthless he is before he does it.
Which brings us to the fireplace. Warren leaves the table, grabs a bowl of stew, and forces a sit-down with the silent, elderly Confederate general, Sanford Smithers.
This is where things get really intense.
This is where the script goes to its darkest, most visceral place. Warren reveals that he knew the general's son, Chester. Chester had ridden out into the mountains specifically to hunt Major Warren down and collect the Confederate bounty. The general has spent years looking for his boy.
Warren now has the general's full attention, and Warren begins to methodically, surgically push the old man past the breaking point.
He's setting a trap.
He places one of his own pistols on the armrest next to the general. Then he tells the story of how he killed Chester.
And he doesn't just say he shot him. Warren paints a horrifying picture. He says he caught the boy in the snow, disarmed him, and forced him to strip completely naked. He made him march for hours in the freezing wind until Chester collapsed, crying and begging for a blanket.
The cruelty is the point here. Warren is deconstructing the myth of the noble Southern soldier, reducing the general's son to a pathetic, freezing, begging child.
It's so degrading.
And then Warren delivers the final psychological blow. He tells the general that he offered Chester a blanket, but only if Chester performed oral sex on him.
The script describes the general just clutching his chair, completely paralyzed by horror and rage, as Warren graphically details the assault. Warren says, "Your son sucked on that warm black dingus as long as he could."
Just brutal.
And the ultimate punchline. Warren never gave him the blanket. He let him freeze to death in the snow anyway. Warren leans in closely and whispers, "The dumbest thing your boy ever did was let me know he was your boy."
We have to analyze the mechanics of this propanation. Why is Warren doing this? Is it just pure sadism? No. It goes back to the concept of laundering violence.
Right, like John Ruth.
Warren wants to murder General Smithers, the embodiment of the Confederacy that tortured him. But if Warren just shoots an unarmed old man in a chair, John Ruth or Oswaldo or Mannix will hang him for murder.
So that's why he places the gun on the armrest.
Exactly. He is creating a legal loophole. He uses psychological torture to push the general into a state of blind, irrational rage, forcing the old man to reach for the weapon.
So if the general touches it,
The moment the general's fingers touch the gun, it becomes an act of self-defense. Warren is manipulating the rules of engagement to execute his enemy in plain sight with a room full of witnesses who will testify that the general drew first.
and it works perfectly. The general snaps, he leaps up, grabbing for the gun, but Warren is infinitely faster. He calmly draws his pistol and shoots the general square in the chest.
It's so calculated.
The force blows Smithers backward, crashing right into the roaring fireplace. His uniform catches fire, and he burns to death in front of everyone.
Warren has successfully executed his enemy, and legally he is untouchable. But while the entire room is staring at the burning corpse of the general, Tarantino executes his own magic trick on the audience.
Yes, the script literally rewinds the clock. While Warren was taunting the general, we were entirely focused on the fireplace. But the script shifts perspective and shows us the background.
We see what was happening behind them.
Exactly. We see unseen fingers lift the lid off the blue coffee pot, boiling on the stove. We see a small blue bottle pour poison directly into the coffee.
It is the absolute definition of the Hitchcockian bomb under the table.
Right.
Alfred Hitchcock famously explained that if a bomb goes off randomly, you get 10 seconds of surprise. But if you show the audience the bomb under the table and the characters don't know it's there, you get 15 minutes of agonizing suspense. We now know the coffee is lethal.
And who is the only character who sees the poison being poured? Daisy Dahlberg. She catches the eye of the poisoner, gives a sinister little smile, and stays completely quiet.
She is the agent of chaos. She knows the trap has been set, and she is perfectly content to sit back and watch the dominoes fall.
So we cut back to the present. The general's charred body is dragged outside. John Ruth, completely oblivious, walks over to the stove. He pours a cup of coffee for O.B., the driver, and a cup for himself. O.B. chugs his down immediately.
Oh, no.
Ruth walks over to the table, sits down across from Daisy, and takes a slow sip. He even offers her some. Daisy just smiles her bloody smile and says, "Coffee makes me jumpy."
The dramatic irony here is suffocating. Every swallow Ruth takes is sealing his fate, and she is savoring every single second of it.
And then the poison takes effect. It isn't a quiet slipping away in your sleep kind of poison. It is violently corrosive. John Ruth drops his cup, his eyes bulge, and his guts essentially rupture.
It's horrifying.
He violently vomits a massive torrential amount of blood all over the table, all over Daisy. Across the room, O.B. drops to his hands and knees, vomiting blood all over the floorboards, screaming in agony.
It's grotesque, visceral violence that just shatters the polite confines of the drawing room mystery. In his final, agonizing seconds, John Ruth looks at Daisy, covered in his blood, laughing at him. He realizes she knew. She kept the secret.
And Ruth acts on pure, primal instinct. With his last dying breath, he roars, rears back, and punches her directly in the face, knocking her front teeth out.
He's still trying to fight back.
He pukes more blood onto her. He tries to draw his pistol to kill her, but he's too weak. Daisy wrestles the gun from his dying hand and fires 3 shots point blank into John Ruth's chest, finishing him off.
The hangman is dead. The symbol of institutional law and order in the room has been assassinated. Total anarchy is a hair's breadth away.
But before Daisy can shoot anyone else, Major Warren tackles her, disarms her, and hits her with his gun. Warren instantly takes total authoritarian control of the room.
He steps right into that vacuum of power.
He lines the remaining men, Joe Gage, Oswaldo, Bob, and Chris Mannix, up against the wall at gunpoint. He knows one of them poisoned the coffee.
We have arrived at the peak of the mystery. The detective has his suspects lined up, but instead of letting Warren deduce the answer right then and there, Tarantino makes a massive structural choice.
He puts the brakes on.
He stops the narrative cold. He forces us, the audience, to leave the bloody present and travel back in time to earlier that morning.
I want to talk about this structural shift. Some critics might argue that pausing the climax to show a flashback kills the momentum. Does it break the tension, or does it serve a higher purpose?
I'd say it doesn't break the tension. It entirely recontextualizes the geography of the space.
How do you mean?
Up until now, we've experienced Minnie's haberdashery through the paranoid eyes of John Ruth. We thought it was a neutral space that just happened to house dangerous people. The flashback reveals that the physical space itself is a slaughterhouse.
So we go back to a beautiful, sunny morning. The blizzard hasn't arrived. We finally meet the real Minnie Mink, a friendly, vibrant black woman.
Right, the real Minnie.
We meet Sweet Dave playing chess with General Smithers. We meet Six Horse Judy, a cheery stagecoach driver, and Gemma, a young girl plucking a chicken. The cabin is warm, domestic, and full of life.
It is the absolute antithesis of the dark, paranoid tomb we've been trapped in. And then a stagecoach arrives. 4 men walk in. We immediately recognize 3 of them, Bob, Oswaldo, and Joe Gage.
But they have someone else with them.
But they're led by a 4th man, Jody.
We learn their true identities. Bob is actually Marco the Mexican. Oswaldo is English Pete Hickox. Joe Gage is Grouch Douglas. And Jody is Daisy Dahlberg's brother, the leader of this ruthless gang.
Pay attention to how they behave when they enter. They're incredibly polite. Jody charms Minnie, speaking a little French to her.
Right.
Oswaldo charmingly flirts with Gemma about jelly beans. Joe Gage acts like a shy cowboy. They are playing the roles of civilized gentlemen perfectly.
Which makes the turn so much more horrifying. They spread out across the room, taking tactical positions. Minnie pours Jody a cup of coffee. Jody smiles, takes a sip, pulls his pistol, and shoots Minnie point blank in the face.
In less than 10 seconds, the polite facade vanishes, and they execute almost everyone in the room with ruthless, mechanical efficiency.
The bloodbath.
Joe Gage shoots Judy. Oswaldo shoots Gemma right through a glass jar of candy. Bob executes Sweet Dave in his chair. They even chase down a young stable boy out in the snow and shoot him in the back.
It is a massacre. But amidst the slaughter, there is one survivor. General Smithers is sitting in his chair, terrified. Jody walks over to him and explains the plan.
He lays it out.
Jody knows John Ruth is bringing his sister Daisy to this cabin. Jody needs to set a trap. But to make the trap work, the cabin can't be empty. It has to look lived in and normal, so Ruth's paranoia isn't triggered immediately.
Jody tells the general, "He's a nice touch. He's authentic." Jody offers the general a deal. Sit quietly in your chair, play the role of the dotty old man, and don't say a word when the bounty hunter arrives.
And if he does that...
If you play your part in the illusion, you get to live.
And General Smithers agrees. He sits there in his chair. And I think this is one of the most profound thematic elements in the entire script. For hours, General Smithers sits quietly by the fire, knowing that the floorboards beneath him are literally dripping with the blood of innocent people.
He knows everything.
He knows the bodies of Minnie, Sweet Dave, and the girls are dumped out back in the snow. But he remains silent to maintain the polite illusion and guarantee his own survival.
It's a damning indictment of complicity. I mean, how many times in history have the old guard sat comfortably in a room built on fresh atrocities, simply turning a blind eye to violence as long as it didn't affect them directly?
Wow.
Smithers is a physical manifestation of a society that ignores the blood seeping through the floorboards just to keep the peace.
And the flashback fundamentally changes how we remember the first half of the story. When we saw Oswaldo sitting so politely in that chair earlier, he was literally sitting on top of the massive bloodstain where Sweet Dave was murdered, covered up by an animal pelt.
Exactly.
When they were hammering the door shut, they were using a door that the gang had shot to pieces during the ambush. The entire environment is a disguised crime scene.
The gang's original plan was simple. Jody would hide in the basement with the rats, they would wait for the blizzard to force Ruth to sleep, and then Jody would shoot Ruth through the floorboards.
So what went wrong?
They didn't account for Major Warren and Chris Mannix hitching a ride. Warren's intense scrutiny threw a massive wrench in their ambush, forcing them to improvise with the poison.
So, with the architecture of the trap finally revealed to us, the script snaps us violently back to the bloody present. John Ruth and O.B. are dead on the floor. Warren has his guns leveled at the suspects. But Warren doesn't know that Jody is directly beneath his feet in the basement.
Warren transitions fully into the role of the detective. He starts interrogating Bob the Mexican. Warren uses a brilliant piece of deductive reasoning based on the very stew they were eating.
Oh, the stew.
He knows Minnie's recipe, and he knows the stew on the stove was made by Minnie that morning. Therefore, Bob's story that Minnie left days ago is a lie.
But he doesn't just stop at the stew. Warren remembers a specific detail about Minnie's character. He asked Bob if he knew about the sign that used to hang over the bar.
Bob is clueless.
Bob has no idea. Warren reveals that Minnie had a strict, explicit sign that read, "No dogs or Mexicans allowed." She was deeply, unabashedly prejudiced against Mexicans.
The irony here is incredible. It isn't a clue left by the killer that solves the mystery. It is the rampant, normalized racism of the frontier that unravels the plot.
It's so dark.
Warren knows with absolute certainty that Minnie Mink would never, ever leave her beloved business in the hands of a Mexican man. Bob's very identity proves he is a murderer.
Warren doesn't wait for a confession. He shoots Bob in the chest. Then he shoots him again. As Bob slides down the wall, Warren points his pistol directly at Bob's face and fires a third time, obliterating it entirely. Marco the Mexican is eliminated.
But he's not done.
But Warren still doesn't know who poisoned the coffee between Oswaldo and Joe Gage.
So Warren resorts to extreme measures. He grabs the boiling pot of poisoned coffee, walks over to Daisy, and threatens to pour the lethal liquid directly down her throat if someone doesn't confess immediately.
The threat works. Joe Gage breaks. He raises his hands and yells, "All right, I done it. I poisoned the coffee." Chris Mannix, furious that he almost drank it, starts screaming at Gage. But while all the attention is focused on Gage's confession, the camera pans down through the floorboards.
Jody Dommerg is in the basement, directly under Major Warren. He aims his pistol straight up through the wood. He says, "Say adios to your huevos," and pulls the trigger.
The bullet rips upward, striking Major Warren directly in the groin. It is a catastrophic, agonizing wound. Warren screams and collapses onto a bed, and with the authoritarian detective taken down, pandemonium completely erupts in the cabin.
The fragile standoff shatters. Oswaldo whips out a hidden pistol and shoots Chris Mannix in the leg. Mannix, falling backward, fires his gun and hits Oswaldo square in the chest.
It's just chaos.
Joe Gage throws his hands up, claiming he's unarmed. In a matter of 3 seconds, the balance of power is obliterated.
Mannix is bleeding heavily from his leg, but he manages to drag himself up, pointing his gun down the basement hole. He screams that if the man in the basement doesn't throw up his guns and surrender, he will shoot Daisy in the head. Warren, writhing in agony on the bed, echoes the threat.
Jody is trapped. To save his sister, he throws his pistols up through the hole and slowly climbs out of the basement.
He finally shows himself.
He emerges, looks at Daisy, who is covered in blood and vomit, missing her teeth, and affectionately says, "How you doing, dummy?"
It's a strangely tender moment between siblings. But the second Jody is fully out of the hole, Major Warren, bleeding out on the bed, shoots Jody directly in the back of the head.
Without warning.
Jody's skull explodes, and his blood and brains splash violently across Daisy's face. She screams in absolute primal horror.
The violence is unrelenting. Seeing Jody die, Joe Gage reaches under a table for a hidden pistol. But Warren and Mannix are ready. They open fire, spinning Joe Gage around with bullets until he drops dead to the floor, and then click. Warren's gun runs completely empty.
The dust finally settles, and we are left with this incredibly grim tableau. The cabin is practically a morgue.
It really is.
John Ruth, O.B., Bob, Jody, and Joe Gage are all dead. Oswaldo is on the floor, slowly bleeding to death. Major Warren is bleeding out on the bed from his groin wound, and Chris Mannix is rapidly losing consciousness from the bullet in his leg.
We have reached the final negotiation. Daisy Domergue, covered in the blood and brains of her brother, realizes she is the only person in the room who isn't mortally wounded. She sees her window and she makes a desperate pitch to Chris Mannix.
She turns to the Confederate marauder and tries to extort him. She claims that Jody didn't just bring 3 men. She says 15 more gang members are waiting in the town of Red Rock. She tells Mannix that if he and Warren kill her and try to claim the bounty, those 15 men will ambush them, slaughter them, and burn the town to the ground.
It's a phantom army. She is inventing a massive threat to leverage her own survival, but she pairs the threat with a bribe.
What's the bribe?
She tells Mannix that if he shoots the Black Major and lets her go, she will let Mannix claim the bounties on the dead bodies of her gang, Oswaldo, Bob, and Joe Gage. He can ride into Red Rock, a rich hero, and survive.
And Warren, out of bullets and helpless, is screaming at Mannix not to listen to her. Now, I have to ask, Mannix has hated Warren since the moment they met.
Oh, absolutely.
Warren humiliated him, held a gun to his head, and represents the Union Army that destroyed Mannix's world.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't Mannix take this deal? It seems like his only way out.
Because Mannix experiences a profound moment of clarity. He looks at Daisy and he thinks about the poisoned coffee.
Right, the coffee.
He remembers that he was about to pour himself a cup, and Daisy sat there, smiling, ready to watch him die in agony without saying a word. He realizes that Daisy is an agent of pure chaos and deceit. If he makes a deal with her, she will absolutely betray him the moment he turns his back.
He calls her bluff perfectly. He tells her, "I believe you are what you've always been, a lion bitch who will do anything to cheat that rope." He rejects her phantom army, but the moment he rejects the deal, the blood loss overtakes him. He says, "I don't feel so good," and he passes out, collapsing onto the floor.
Daisy's path is clear. She is still handcuffed to the massive dead body of John Ruth. She drags Ruth's corpse across the floor to a shelf. She grabs a hatchet and begins frantically, viciously hacking off John Ruth's arm to free herself.
Warren is screaming from the bed, desperately trying to wake the white boy up. Daisy chops through the bone. She is free, though Ruth's severed arm is still locked in the handcuffs dangling from her wrist. She makes a diving sprint across the room for Mannix's dropped pistol.
But at the very last second, Mannix snaps awake.
Thank goodness.
He grabs the gun and fires, hitting Daisy in the shoulder and blasting her across the room. He crawls over to her, presses the barrel of the gun directly to her face, and prepares to blow her head off.
But Warren stops him. Warren yells, "Don't shoot her, Mannix!" Warren explains that they are both bleeding to death. They have no say in their own survival anymore. But they do have a say in how Daisy Domergue dies.
You're right.
Warren reminds Mannix that John Ruth was the one who let them on the stagecoach. John Ruth saved them from the blizzard, and John Ruth was the hangman.
Warren invokes the twisted honor of the man they both watched die. He tells Mannix, "When the hangman catches you, you don't die by a bullet. You hang." In their final moments, these two men decide to fulfill the legacy of John Ruth. They decide to launder their final act of violence through the ritual of a hanging.
The final sequence is agonizing. You have these two bleeding, dying men working together. Mannix tosses a rope over the ceiling rafters. He fashions a noose and places it around Daisy's neck. Together, grunting in absolute agony, Mannix and Warren pull the rope, hoisting Daisy off the ground.
It's so dark.
She kicks. She strangles. Ruth's severed arms swing grotesquely from her wrist until finally her neck snaps and she dies.
And as her body swings from the rafters, Mannix collapses backward onto the floor, right next to Warren's bed. The violence is finally over. And in the quiet aftermath, Mannix asks Warren for one last favor.
What is that?
He asks to read the Lincoln letter.
Warren reaches into his coat with a bloody hand. He pulls out the fake letter, smearing the parchment with his own blood. He hands it down to Mannix. Mannix takes it, getting his Confederate blood all over it as well. And as they both lie there dying, the wind howling outside the cabin, Mannix reads the fake words of Abraham Lincoln aloud. "Old Mary Todd," he said, smiling slightly. "That's a nice touch." And Warren softly replies, "Thanks."
We have to unpack the profound tragedy of this final image. Think about who these two men are. Mannix is an unrepentant Confederate racist. Warren is a black Union major who fought a war to kill men exactly like Mannix. They despise everything the other stands for.
They hated each other.
Yet, in their final moments, they find a twisted sense of brotherhood. But what unites them? It isn't truth. It isn't justice. They bond over a completely fabricated, cynical lie about Abraham Lincoln.
Their only moment of peace is built entirely on a deception.
Exactly. It perfectly encapsulates the grim thesis of Tarantino's script. The nation is so deeply divided, the wounds of the Civil War are so infected, that the only way these two factions can find any common ground is through a shared myth, a lie they tell themselves as they mutually bleed to death in a frozen wasteland, having just violently lynched a woman. It is a bleak, uncompromising vision of American history.
It is a masterful, blood-soaked exploration of hatred, prejudice, and the desperate lies we construct just to survive another day. From the claustrophobia of stagecoach racing a blizzard, to the ticking time bomb of a drawing room mystery, culminating in a massacre where literally no one gets out alive. The architecture of this story is just breathtaking.
It really is.
But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to mull over. Let's go back to General Smithers in that flashback. When the Dahmer gang slaughtered everyone in Minnie's haberdashery, they spared Smithers for one specific reason: to make the room look authentic when the stagecoach arrived. And the general agreed to the terms.
He did.
For hours, he sat completely silently in his chair by the fire. He knew the floorboards beneath his boots were soaked in the fresh blood of innocent people. He knew the bodies were just outside the door. But he sat there, playing the role of a polite, dotty old man, simply so he could survive.
It is the ultimate question of complicity.
Exactly. How often in the history of a divided nation have people sat quietly in rooms built on fresh atrocities, simply playing their part to maintain a polite, authentic illusion? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the architecture of the rooms you sit in, the narratives you are told, and the letters you are handed.